Welcome to my craft table. Hello, this is Jamie Magrich. Welcome to my craft table. Today I'd like to show you how I made this card. This is a cased card. I cased it from one of the very first cards that I made years ago when at my friend Dianne's house. It was one of her Stamp-A-Stacks. It was one of my very first introductions to Stampin' Up, and I made a whole stack of these cards. I kept one of, obviously. So this is my version of this card, and let's get started and I'll show you how I made it. Hang on, sorry, stuff sticking together here. Alright, I have a scrap, literally a scrap of Whisper White, a scrap of crumb cake. I have a piece of crumb cake which is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. A piece of Poppy Parade which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Or you can use your card base, the Poppy Parade, and then add a white layer. But then I have my card base which is 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 scored and folded at 4 1/4. I have some copy paper or some, you can use like posted, you know, the wide posted, or anything that you can put on and take off for masking paper. That's the word I was trying to come up with. Okay, for stamp sets, I have Perfectly Plaid. All I'm going to use in this stamp set today is this tree. In the card I did use the Christmas cheer. I had cut it off of here previously, but I'm going to use a different sentiment for that for today. And then I'm using this one. I don't know if you can see it very well. This is the stamp set out of the Paper Pumpkin, Winter Woods from October. And I'm going to be using the spots, the snowflake, the little bird, and a sentiment. Okay, so let's get started. First thing you're going to need to do is take your scrap of, in this instance it's printer paper, a pair of scissors. Every one of these is going to be a little bit different because of how you cut this. And you're going to just cut a little slopey kind of hillside. Okay, you need both pieces. So we're going to put aside this one. And we're going to bring in the top piece. I'm going to place it over our card. We're also going to need, for inks, Whisper White. You're going to need the refiller because every time I go to use the Whisper White craft ink I need to refill it, so I already did that previous. Poppy Parade, Garden Green, and Balmy Blue. And the Tree Punch. Along with, this is optional, the Poppy Parade light marker, and some sort of black marker to make the eye on the bird. Okay, so let's put this on the top. We're going to open the Whisper White craft ink. This is the old style pad. And we're going to take a sponge and we're going to sponge this bottom half underneath this typing paper. You gotta hold it still, and it's gonna take a little bit of effort. And I kind of found if I went in the motion that I thought the hills would go, kind of looked a little bit better. This white ink takes quite a while to dry, so you might need to do your heat tool or do it in a couple steps. that's not too bad. Okay, then I took it and I inked around the edges. And just soften that hard edge just a little bit. Make it look a little bit more snowy and wintry. I added more around these corners at the bottom as well. Okay. Now we're going to close this white ink up. We're going to use it again in a minute, but we don't want it to dry out, so we're closing it up. Okay, now we're going to bring in the garden green. And the first thing we're going to do is stamp a tree onto this your scrap of crumb cake. We're going to use this tree here. I guess it doesn't really matter. Stamp it on there. Make sure I get a really good impression. Very good. Let's set that aside for a minute. I'm going to bring this back in. Now the other piece of the paper that we cut off, we're going to place over the snow that we put down. And we're going to stamp our trees. And we're going to do first and second generation, so we're going to stamp a tree. And then move over a little bit and stamp another one. Stamp a tree, you can make them higher or lower, however you need to. And then move over and stamp another one. Over here. So I'm going to do 5 or 6 solid trees. And then however many you can do extra of the other ones. That looks pretty good. Okay. Really does look pretty good. Okay, now we're going to, now one thing I do suggest, I don't know if you can see it on here, there's just a tiny little space between my green and my white, so if you're, when you're putting this paper on, if you make sure you put it down just a little bit below where you've inked, you won't get that line. Okay. I'm done with the green ink completely. Move this out of the way so it doesn't get everywhere. Alright, now we're going to bring in the balmy blue. We're going to bring in this large oops, out of camera, sorry, this large snowflake. We're going to ink it up and we're going to stamp 3 of them on this background. And we want them to look like they're moving, so we're going to stamp 1 over here. I'm going to stamp 1 over here. 1 over here. Okay, done with that one. Now we can close that up. Okay, we're going to bring in the Whisper White again. We're going to bring in the snowflakes, splotchies. We can ink that up. And we're going to stamp some snowflakes lightly. You can tell I re-inked it because it's quite dark. All across the top, going down over the trees a little bit. Don't want to get carried away, but you want to have enough so that it looks like it's snowing. Okay. set this aside for a minute. We're going to bring in our scratch piece and our Poppy Parade. And we're going to bring in our little bird. We're going to stamp this onto this Whisper White piece. I'm going to stamp another one just in case, because that tail didn't come out great on that one. Okay, then we're going to fussy cut this out. It's a little bit tricky to fussy cut out, but it is doable. So I'm going to put you on pause and fussy cut it out so you don't have to sit here and watch me do it. And I will be right back. Okay, I've got that cut out. I don't know if you can see, but around the edge it's got that white line, so that's why I brought in my Stampin' Blend marker. And I'm just going to take the edge of it and draw around the edge. Kind of hides that. Now, if you were lucky enough to get this paper pumpkin kit and didn't use all the pieces, you still have some of the little birds from the kit, you could by all means use one of those. All my birds are accounted for, so I'm going to have to make my own, which is fine, it works. Okay, alright. That looks much better than with the white edge around it. Now I'm just going to take the black marker and do a little dot for an eye. Nothing fancy, just a little dot. Just so he looks like he has an eye. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Okay. Now we're going to bring in our card. It's still wet, so I'm going to dry it real fast. And when it's dry, I'll come back and we'll finish the card. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure that white ink was almost dry. It's still got a couple little wet spots on it. Alright, and I need the Poppy Parade ink so I can stamp the sentiment and the bird one more time. But first, let's pop out our tree with the pine tree punch. Line it up in there. This one doesn't have a stem, which is good because we don't want it for this instance. Line it up. Punch it out. Again, we're going to bring in our scissors and we're going to just make this bottom edge, cut off where the stem is, and make the bottom edge a little bit more so that it looks like it's in a snowdrift. We're going to put some dimensionals on the back of this. I just need a couple. Okay, we're going to place that on the card where we want it. It might be in a different spot for you, but I'm trying to stick with the rules of 3 or whatever's most pleasing to the eye. Okay, stick that down. This little bird here, I'm going to bring in one of my glue dots from my paper pumpkin. Put that on the back of him. And then peel that backing off. Okay, then I'm going to adhere him to the top of my tree. Okay, I'm going to bring in the other bird and the Poppy Parade ink. And I'm going to stamp him over here on the ground. He's going to come out a little bit lighter because of the white ink underneath him. So it's going to look like you have a pair of cardinals. Oh, he came out a little bit wonky, but it's alright. Put the eye in. Oops, I need this ink still, don't I? Gotta do the sentiment. Stamp the sentiment, and this one I'm going to use Season's Greetings instead of Christmas Cheer. I don't know why. Just change it up a little bit. Let's stamp that down here. And the reason I chose to put it down here is because then I have 3 red elements in that triangular fashion so that it keeps your eye floating around the page. Perfect. Okay, let's bring in our other elements. And since this is still wet, I'm actually going to put, well, I think I can glue on it. I'm going to use the wet glue. Glue on the back of my stamped piece. This is just going to have like a tiniest little border around it because the red piece is just a 1/16 of an inch larger. Okay, that'll go on the front of our card. I'm going to turn this over onto a scratch paper, a clean scratch paper, so I can push it down and not get ink smeared all over me or my card. Look at that ink on my hand. I'm glad I did that on the back of that. Wow, okay. Now, let's adhere this to the front of the card. This is the same size as the card front, or it should be. Okay. And the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a few gems. Now these are optional. I'm just going to scatter a few little gems around. And again, that will draw your eye around the page. Okay, that is our card for today. This is the one we just did together with a Season's Greetings sentiment. Here's the one I did previously with Christmas Cheer. You could use the Winter Wishes as well. That would be an excellent greeting on there. And thank you so much for joining me at Jamie's Craft Table. I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy having some crafting fun.